guys again.
Good evening. My name is Mark Roskine, and I am a board member with the National Transportation Safety Board. And I'm going to actually begin this evening's briefing by thanking all the first responders that are here. We did this earlier, but we really want to acknowledge your efforts and ongoing assistance in supporting this investigation. So thank you all very much. Well done. We're coming to the end of the first full day of the investigation, and so I am going to provide information on what's been accomplished throughout the day. We will talk specifically about the investigation work, and then also about some activities related to transportation disaster assistance. We have members from our TDA group here, and I'm actually going to start talking about the TDA work that happened today. Specifically, earlier this afternoon, the city of Reno, along with local agencies and nonprofit organizations, stood up a family assistance center. This is located at the Hyatt Place Hotel in Reno. So any family member that has been affected by yesterday's accident can go to this center and be linked to appropriate services. And I encourage you to get the message out about that. This is actually very important for your community. The TDA group is also assisting the Washoe County Medical Examiner as they fulfill their on-site responsibilities. As of this evening, the medical examiner continues their on-site work. Specifically regarding the on-site investigation work, today the NTSB investigators spent the day documenting the wreckage site. They have identified and recovered portions of the accident aircraft tail. And as part of this process, the NTSB has been aided by a technical inspector with first-hand knowledge of these modified aircraft. He has facilitated access to some exemplar aircraft, which has really helped our investigators further understand the systems in these modified aircraft. And what is planned for tomorrow? So the activities for the second full day of investigation include completing documentation of the wreckage site, and then to begin recovery of parts, which will be then transferred to a secure location off-site for detailed analysis. Also, as I mentioned in our earlier briefing, there has been a significant amount of photos and video material that's been submitted to our investigators. Our investigators are currently reviewing and examining that information, and they will be transferring all of the video and photo information and materials that have been provided to the NTSB Research and Engineering Laboratory in Washington, D.C. on Monday for detailed analysis. We're good? Okay. We're going to take some questions. Operator, if you could queue up anybody who's on the line. But we will begin with questions from you.
Mr. Roskine, you've spoken about the medical examiner still working at the scene, at the site here. Are there still missing people and or still body recovery on the tarmac?
They informed us this evening that their work continues tonight. They're talking about sometime in the next 24 hours to finish their work. As we mentioned earlier, specific information regarding fatalities and injuries will be provided by the city of Reno. I think we were quite fortunate this morning to have Deputy Chief Evans here, and they are back after this briefing to provide you an update if you'd like that.
Can you talk about reports of missing pieces of clothing and before the crash and how investigators are dealing with the aspect of that?
We have not only heard those reports, but seen photos and video. Clearly, that is one aspect of this accident that will be investigated intensively. I think, and I want to make sure I emphasize this if it went by because it was one line, but today they were able to identify and recover parts from the accident aircraft tail. So clearly that could be part of it. I also mentioned earlier that a component piece was recovered from the area observed to be from where that occurred, where the photos and videos are. But that component has not been identified. We have no idea if it's actually part of the accident aircraft. But clearly that is a focused area for us to look at.
Could you talk about also how this may impact future air races?
Excuse me, I'll go here, please.
Assuming that it is the elevator turn tab, how does that affect the plane? Why would that make you go up? If again, that is the reason why this crash happened.
Right, so the question is, if that elevator trim tab actually played a role in this, how would it affect it? Howard, you want to?
At this point, that would be just analysis and speculation. We're not going to get into that until we get the complete documentation of the aircraft done.
And again, I think that's an example of what we talked about earlier. We're just collecting the factual information now, so to interpret what that would mean in this particular accident is much too early. You wanted to follow up?
Yeah, I know it's early in the investigation, but how do you think it could play a role in other air races in the future?
So one of the things that the NTSB does is look at least at three major areas. That involves the human, the machine, and the environment. So clearly, as we discussed earlier, the human, that means we're going to look at the age of the pilot, his training, his certifications, etc. The machine, we've just talked about components that will be analyzed. When we talk about the environment, it's not just the weather, but those are things like oversight and the other special safety circumstances that are involved in air shows and air races. And so the board will take a comprehensive look at all aspects that could have affected the cause of the accident, and again, what kind of safety recommendations we can make to make sure this doesn't happen again. Is there a question from the phone?
Is it your sense that the FAA treats air shows as seriously as they would, say, commercial aircraft?
The FAA, in their flight standards area, actually has a special division that oversees air shows and air races.
How is it staffed?
And that's exactly one of the areas we'll be looking at. So we know they have a specific division that has oversight for these. And as we're talking about the environment, that's one of the things we will look at, which is exactly what their policies and procedures are, how they evaluate the safety of any particular air show or race, and that will be part of the comprehensive examination that we're talking about.
So that'll be NTSB looking at FAA?
Yes, so he was just asking both FAA oversight and whether we'll be looking at it. And I think one of the important aspects of that question is that the NTSB as an independent agency will look at all these aspects, the human, the machine, the environment, including the oversight. So you can have safety procedures that are in place where they actually carried out correctly in this circumstance. We will be looking at that.
You talked about the Family Assistance Center. Where is that again? How long will that be staffed?
So it is at the Hyatt Place Hotel in Reno, and typically a Family Assistance Center will be staffed for as long as it's needed.
Given that there was no fire, but there was high speed involved, how easy or difficult will reconstructing the debris be?
So the question was, given there was high-speed impact, how easy will it be to reconstruct this? Would you like to comment?
It will be quite difficult because it was highly fragmented. We do have some parts of, like we said, of the tail and control system, but it will be difficult.
Does it help or hurt? I mean, does it help there was no fire?
So he's asking if it's going to help or hurt, don't you?
It will definitely hurt because of the high fragmentation level of the wreckage. We may not have everything to work with. That's part of what we're going to do is, when we do our detailed investigation, is to establish just how much of the system we do have of the control system.
We found a portion of the tail and what else? The control system is it?
The question is what else we found in relation to the tail, and specifically they identified and recovered what we know are parts of the tail from the accident aircraft. Is there anything we can say about specifics of the parts at this point?
We can identify some parts other than tail. Those are also pieces. They're not complete control surfaces by any means. And we do have parts that we have identified as part of the control system. But again, until we do our detailed analysis, we don't know how much of those systems we have.
Well,
was there-
Just one
Howard?
second, we'll go to the phone. Operator, is there a question? Great.
In the
So
past, there has
let's go
been,
right here first, please, sir.
could you describe, if you could, as best you can, the sequence of events in the seconds leading up to the crash, and how the scene looks now, what the sort of impact it left in that area?
So the question is if we can describe sequence of events prior to the accident and what the accident site looks like at this point. We know that the aircraft was operating at low altitude and high speed. It went nose up, climbed for a brief period of time, and quickly went nose down, impacting at high speed. Do you want to describe what you have, size-wise or otherwise, about the wreckage on the crash site? Not sure there's much to...
Right now, part of what we did today was use a global positioning satellite system and a laser system to document the debris field. So we will have exact coordinates of all of the major identified pieces, but that will be part of the final report.
You heard about how big of an area, I mean,
Uh,
it was spread out around?
Not in dimensions at this point.
An acre? Smaller, bigger?
I'd say larger than an acre.
Is there a hole there, Mr. Baker?
Yes, there is a large principal impact crater,
How deep?
probably 3 feet deep, probably 6 to 8 feet wide.
And that was on tarmac?
That was on tarmac. That's correct.
What's your name again? This is the question is what was his name, what is his name? And this is the investigator in charge of the accident, which is Mr. Howard Plagens, Plagens. Can I use this as an, we're going to take two more. Can I use this, given what they're talking about, to let them know? Yes? We're, as you know, giving you more factual information what's been accomplished today. Part of the reason I guess I'm a little hesitant about this is because it looks like we're going to be able to arrange the pool opportunity to actually get to the site. So rather than have us try to describe that verbally now, you're going to get to see it, hopefully very soon. There's a question.
How about anything on a recorder or any sort of data device in the plane? Have you guys been able to figure that out?
There's a question about whether there's any information from a data device in the aircraft. As far as we know at this point, there was no such recording device. There have been questions, given some of the update and modification, whether that could have existed, but we don't have any information about that at this point.
Can you describe the times that were taken at this air race expectations?
The question is whether we can describe the precautions that were taken at this race to protect the spectators. And no, I can't, because what we are going to be doing, frankly, as we mentioned earlier, the FAA has oversight, and so part of the investigation we'll be doing is pulling all of those specific certifications that are provided and what is included in those precautions, and looking at not only what the certification covers, but where they followed in this circumstance. Much too early to do that at this point.
Can you give us an update on?
Can I just go back here for instance?
Yeah.
1 second, please.
How will you account for all the pieces that people took home as souvenirs
How can we account for all the pieces
of the wreckage?
of the
Some
wreckage that people
brought-
took home
They've
as...
shown news cameras pieces of the planes.
So how can you account for all the pieces which would be missing from our reconstruction efforts?
Yeah.
Just to put this in context, two elements. One is this accident took only a few seconds to occur. It is going to take the NTSB months to not only put the factual information together, but analyze it. And I think it's clear as you see the impact site, this evening, and as Mr. Peggins already said, there's a lot of fragmentation. There's no expectation that we would ever be able to put all those pieces together. And so whether it disintegrated at the accident or took away, there's no expectation we'd be able to get all of those anyway.
Last question.
Last question? Yes, sir.
How large a radius did casualties occur from the crash site? Is that known? How far away were people getting hurt?
How far away were people getting hurt from the crash site? And I'm not sure we know that at this point. We haven't really.
We would defer that to
Yeah.
the medical examiner, local police.
And so while we would be looking at the crash site, again, as far as the fatalities, injuries, and not only compiling statistics, but the area that was affected for those people, you can ask the city of Reno. And so that was the last question. I'm going to reiterate that we're going to look for pool activity. We're also going to allow whomever would like to come up and give an update to be able to do that. My last comment is that we will provide updated information tomorrow, and so we suggest you stay in contact with the NTSB Public Affairs or on Twitter, where you can find out when timing will be for tomorrow. Thank you very much.
Which someone here from the FAA?
Good afternoon. My name is Lieutenant Mac, MAC, Benzon, V like Victor, ENZON, Lieutenant with the Reno Police Department Patrol Division. As of 7 a.m. this morning, local time, I took incident command of scene security out here. I'll entertain your questions, give you the updates that I have, although they are limited.
Can we expect the total rise?
I'm sorry.
Can we expect the debt count to rise?
Can we expect the dead count to rise? That's unknown. What we have is the best information we have from the medical examiner's office right now.
What is the current?
It was 10 total, 9 total deaths.
17 still, what's the one, sir?
I have 31 were admitted total. 69 were treated at local hospitals. 36 were released after being treated. 31 were admitted. And some of those deaths, 2 of those deaths occurred at a local hospital.
Can you remember the critical?
I have 8 currently in critical condition.
What are you doing out here? What is your role at the scene?
Primarily, our role is twofold: scene security in cooperation with NTSB, and secondary assistance of the medical examiner's office and scene security, trying to keep people away from the actual crash scene itself.
He mentioned that he would defer a description of some of the injuries and the scene. Can you describe that a little bit? I know we'll get to see it, but what's the scene like?
Question is, what's the scene like? Can we describe the scene? Again, you guys will see it as best as I can describe it. Your pictures will describe it better. As far as a radius from the impact site to the injuries, that is still being mapped with GPS technology now, and so I don't have that information for you. So I can't answer that until it's mapped out and it's all set up.
Matt, what about, do you describe it as a radius, down and out?
Certainly it's down and out. I wouldn't describe it necessarily as a radius per se. When you see that, you'll see that some of the fragmentation goes out toward the airfield as opposed to in toward the stands. And so thankfully that most of the fragmentation went out that way.
Lieutenant, let's take one last question so they can go.
Has everybody been removed?
Sorry, go ahead.
Any missing or unaccounted for?
I don't have that information.
Can we go over those numbers again one more time, Matt? It was a little confusing. 61 treated,
69 treated,
and 31 admitted,
31 of those were admitted.
9 dead,
Yes, 9 were.
8 critical.
Correct. 8 critical.
How many are still in the hospital?
Of those 31 that were admitted, I don't have the information as to how many of those were released after being admitted.
Any idea about victim IDs, when we could get those?
We are working closely with our investigations division as well as the medical examiner's office. I don't anticipate that happening anytime soon. It could be a matter of days or more before we get that information.
Are the remains?
Lieutenant Mac, MAC, Benzon, VENZON.
Are there still remains on the scene?
Our previous numbers were different. We had 54 transported to the hospital this morning. Now we're saying 69.
69 were treated at the hospital, 54 were transported by our local medics.
Can we infer that the other 15 painted there themselves?
I suppose, yes.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.